Shalom, my bitches, and happy Thanksgiving! We're continuing on with When Deathworlders Meet, Part 3, by Andrew's second account. The captain caught Ginta's eye as she frowned at the Exo's notion. Apparently, she didn't like the idea of staging animal fights for fun or profit either, but probably for reasons like morality and empathy.
No, I don't think I'm going to feed Stivan to the night beast. Not today, anyway. Probably.
Turning to his Exo, Antikatoon said,
Tell me, Mashi, you were part of the tracking and recording team. Where is this thing from?
Well, that's the question of the hour,
said the other man, using a set of grasping tentacles to rub his proboscis.
He may have been part of a convoy,
fell out of some massive group warp bubble, and became lost. His ship has a warp field generator of its own, but it's small and crude. Tikkikirik in engineering looked at the computer, too, to try and find out where it came from. But even with the AI helping, she says it's totally bricked. We think that's what caused him to be stranded in the first place. This ship is powered by antimatter.
What?
Bellowed the captain.
Once we found out, we jettisoned it. Thank the lords and gods.
The captain shook his head in disbelief.
That's just insane. So, wait a minute. If it has a warp drive and is powered by antimatter of all things, why would you jump to the conclusion that it was part of a convoy?
It's the only thing that makes sense,
Meishi explained.
The maximum range of its craft with full containment field was about 400 light years. 40% of its containment had been expended, so I take it there are no habitable worlds within 160 light years.
You're quick at math, sir, and no.
The captain rubbed his furrowed brows and sighed.
So, it is possible that it will be missed. That's not good news.
Maybe they'll chalk it up to the hazards of driveless warp travel,
the Exo reasoned.
And even if they do come looking, if there's a whole group of these things trying to get somewhere at once, then it must be pretty important, so I doubt they'll start right away. I've got a super predator, and possible super soldier on my ship. The human was probably a part of some alien invasion force headed to one of the fringe territories. His ship looks exactly like an orbital drop pod with warp field generator attached, doesn't it?
There's some evidence that it was a multi-staged craft, yes. The drive section may have been designed to be discarded in order to allow planetary entry of the capsule, but there is the question of why it would travel using a convoy's warp bubble when it has a perfectly good drive of its own, which it won't use, and then discard before planetfall. Could be standardization of design, but I really doubt it. But if that's not the case, then we're back to the question of range.
He huffed.
And?
He lifted his snout from his hands, where it had been buried in frustration.
And there were no weapons aboard his craft,
said Mashi,
though he was wearing a surprisingly strong set of armor. It appears to be impervious to vacuum, radiation, heat, cold, small arms fire, large arms fire, poisonous atmospheres, and hostile wildlife, among other things. The thing is tough, but flexible.
His people have that kind of technology.
Not really, no,
the Exo explained, gesturing a tentacle in the negative.
Not in the sense that you mean.
It's not terribly advanced. Any galactic race could make something like that. They just couldn't make use of it. It took 4 of us to drag it into the cargo hold.
The captain's expression went flat.
And he was wearing it?
Yes. Yes, he was.
In here?
Antikatoon asked, pointing to the deck.
Not out in some extravehicular excursion?
Yes. In here.
The Exo pulled his proboscis tightly shut, the equivalent of pursing his lips. It seems he didn't like where this conversation was going either. A thought occurred to the captain.
Then just how in the seven hells of Borogon did you manage to even get him out of it? Oh, we asked him to remove it. Asked? Yes, he's very nice. I don't give a shit how nice he is. I just...
Meishi hastened to interrupt.
Sir, I don't think he knows he's been abducted into slavery.
That was just plain dumb. His assessment of the being's race fell a few notches. On the other hand, it was entirely possible that this genetic freak was not representative of his people. In fact, it was entirely likely he wasn't. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. If this was a super soldier on its way to war, the thing only had to sit in its pod, land, and fight. It didn't need to be very smart, which might have contributed to why its computer was destroyed, explaining how it couldn't find its way back, and explained why it didn't even know it was a piece of merchandise. Heck, the thing was probably so dumb that its people wouldn't even bother to give it a gun until after it had landed, and had a safe direction in which to point it. It was probably programmed to be compliant and take orders, which was why it seemed to get along well with everyone.
"One last thing before I go, sir,"
the vet said meekly. He had forgotten that Ginta was even standing there.
It looks similar to, well...
To what?
To...
She sputtered softly.
Spit it out,
he said impatiently, motioning for her to continue.
That thing,
she whispered, pointing to the deck below her feet. The captain and XO each sucked in a breath of air. He hadn't thought about it, but the more he did, the more the captain realized she was right. They were both bipedal tetrapods for one. It was an efficient but inherently unstable design, suited for organisms that were either on the move or at rest, and nowhere in between. They were both mostly bald for another. Their heads were differently shaped, but not nearly as much as any two other races might have been. The coloration was different. This human had a pale malted cream color, and the night beasts generally were anywhere from light blue to purple to jet black. They were even the same general height from heel to scalp, though the human might have been taller and bulkier actually. And then there were those eyes, forward-facing, like gun barrels aimed right at you, bright and dangerous. He hoped the humans didn't glow at night like the beasts did. The thought sent a chill down his spine. On the other hand, comparing the two just felt plain stupid. Engineered soldier or not, Steven was one step above a friendly pet, and came from a people with adequate technology. If this were a true case of convergent evolution, his people would also have to have been from a Class 11 Deathworld, almost exactly like Nick's. That simply couldn't be, because Deathworlds could not produce true sentience, only feral monstrosities. The captain rolled his eyes and sighed internally. He would still perform his due diligence and try to best determine if the thing posed any real risks, even if he was highly skeptical.
XO, is it safe to talk to the human? He asked.
I think so, said Mashi, and Ginta nodded in agreement. His translator is working great now, and I was chatting with him for a bit. Told him I had to lock him in his room for operational security reasons. He didn't have the clearance to be wandering around. I think he bought it. After all we've learned of him, I wouldn't let slip he's anything other than a guest. He might not be as compliant.
The captain thought a moment.
Ginta, your evening is cancelled. You'll start developing poisons and sedatives to use on this thing immediately. Airborne, but harmless to everyone else if possible. Go now.
The woman nodded and slowly trotted off the bridge. Even her hoofbeats sounded dejected.
I'm going to have a chat with Steven before I retire for the evening, said Captain Anticatoon.
With that, he stood from his chair and left without another word. Alright, y'all, so I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, go ahead and leave a like. If you have something that you would like to talk to me about, go ahead and leave it in the comments. If you would like to hear more of my stuff, please subscribe. And if you'd like to see me show up in your subscription feed, go ahead and hit the bell icon on the side. Happy Thanksgiving, y'alls.